So I got the VAXEE XE 3 days ago, and initially I wasn't very impressed. There are improvements over the previous mice, the shape just did not feel that exciting for me. But then I decided to try it in-game and I launched Kovacs, and to my surprise, after a bit of warm-up, I started to break records. I did extremely well in target switching and precision scenarios, and tracking also felt precise and responsive. I wasn't as smooth on my first 2 days that I used the XE, but that is subject to change when I get more used to the mouse. In CSGO my flicks were on point and target switching was extremely precise. I got some nasty clips and kill streaks in a matter of minutes, but let's continue with my in-game performance a little bit later on in the video, and let's start talking about the features. Firstly, the mouse feet design has changed. They still have 2 feet, but now they have a massive feet on the front and a large feet at the back. And sadly, the experience on my unit at least is worse than it is on the Addice AX, for example. The glide is not as smooth, and even a mousepad such as the Zowie GSR SE Rouge feels somewhat rough. Something like the Artisan High, the Otsu feels even more rough. I can still enjoy the Otsu, but I would not use the Artisan High with how the feet feel in my unit. I never had any issues with their previous mouse feet design, so I'm disappointed that they decided to change it. But to be fair, these feet just might need a longer break-in period, and they also could be just worse on my unit. Another thing that surely is of interest to you guys is the cable, as the XE now has a detachable USB-C cable. The cable is very locked in with the buckle. I was initially fairly scared on how it will feel in use, but again to my surprise the cable actually feels much better than on their previous mice. It's the same cable, but the cover is more loose, making it much more flexible. Optimally I would still like the buckle to be shorter, and I would like it to be more of an upward angle on it. The flexibility is very good, it's on the same level as Zowie C-series cables. Well, not quite as good as the Zowie cable, but it's almost there. The scroll wheel is also something that received updates from VAXEE, as they are now using an Addice encoder. The scrolling experience is now smoother and much more silent. The steps are still defined and tactile, but just less than they used to be. Actuating the scroll wheel button is also now easier than on their previous models. The XE also brings some new design aspects, so we now have a button on the top of the mouse, which is basically meant for productivity. And I could not really care less about this button, but if you do, there is a lot of information on VAXEE's website about this, so I recommend you read up on there. The quality and feel is second to none. It's an absolute tank and there is no side flex or any kind of creaking. The coding is absolutely premium feeling and it's very creepy for me. Overall, the VAXEE matte coding is in my opinion the best on the market at the moment. But at the same time it also kind of should be, because the mouse costs $70 and that's for sure not cheap for a wide mouse. The weight on the XE is about 68 grams on my scale, and as the mouse is fairly large, it does not feel heavy whatsoever, but in hand it does feel heavier than the extremely well balanced and lightweight G Pro X Superlight. The weight is also decently balanced on top of the sensor, which is pretty centrally located. Not as well balanced as the Superlight, but as this is mainly a claw and palm grip mouse, this should not ruin your experience whatsoever. The main mouse buttons are something that I've always loved with VAXEE mice, especially with the Addice AX. They are similar on the XE, it's the same switch but 10 grams heavier, but because the trigger design is different, they feel pretty much just as light as on the Addice AX. There is some pre-travel on both the buttons, but a little bit more on the right side, which makes it feel a little bit cheaper, but overall the click feeling is very good and these are very functional to use in-game, so it's easy to tap, easy to spam, and as these are light to actuate, they also feel very responsive at the 2 millisecond debound setting. And finally about the shape of the VAXEE XE, it shares a lot of similarities with the Zowie FK series and some with the G Pro X Superlight. If you look at how the shape flares out at the front and the back, there is a lot of difference with the XE and the FK. The FK series has the thinnest point on the middle and it flares out quite a bit to the front and towards the back of the mouse even more. And on the XE, the thinnest point is of course also in the middle and it flares out a little bit towards the front and a little bit towards the back. Not nearly as much as the FK. The back of the mouse is also less wide on the XE, which makes it much more comfortable to grip in the way that I like. Basically these are 2 contact points that I have, and then there is some contact at times in the middle of my palm. Whereas the FK has quite a bit wider back right here, and the contact is pretty much all over my palm. The grip width then again is similar on the XE and the FK1 Plus, and overall so is the profile and height of the mouse, but because the FK1 Plus has a lot more curvature, it feels very different in hand. The sides on the XE can actually feel quite a bit like the Superlight because these are somewhat flat and provide very minimal curvature just like the Superlight. In terms of length, then again, the XE is smaller than even the FK1, and actually it's pretty much the same length as the Superlight. But because the VAXEE XE is wider, it's higher profile and has the central located hump, it does feel larger in hand than the Superlight. I'd say that in terms of size, it actually feels very close to the FK1, just wider and higher profile. The XE is, in my opinion, pretty much only made for claw and palm grip, as it's quite large and wide for that fingertip grip. For me, it's the most comfortable with a relaxed claw where my fingers are quite far up front on the right corner here. The mouse is also high enough profile so you can pull off a pincer claw, but it does not feel as good as relaxed claw, at least for me. A more aggressive claw is also an option, and so is that palm grip, and this mouse can feel very comfortable for that grip style. My hands are 19 x 10 cm and it feels good and comfortable for me, but if your hands are any shorter than 18 cm, it might feel too large for you. So let's go a bit more in depth to my in-game performance with the VAXEE XE and why exactly I think that I aimed so well with it. To begin with, you know you are doing good in-game when you're really not feeling it, meaning that I felt I did okay, but I still managed to break records in 5 scenarios and my average scores are higher than previously. Of course, I do improve all the time, so my score should be getting higher and higher, so breaking records is only natural. But the weird thing is that I haven't had that much time to play in the past 2 months, and I've only used Kovacs to get used to new shapes, so it does not make much sense that I would be breaking records already with the VAXEE XE. But to continue with describing my performance, as I already said, my aim felt spot on, especially in target switching and precision scenarios. Even with tracking, I broke my previous record in smooth tracking and also in the more hectic twitchy kind of tracking. And after I noticed that I perform extremely well in Kovacs, I moved on to CSGO, which is in my opinion the game to beat when testing aim in terms of precision, control and quick flicks. Especially on these custom warm-up deathmatch servers which are filled with semi-pros and professional players. But yeah, my precision was on point, target switching especially at shorter ranges was fast and precise. I hit some very nice flicks and I was able to deliver longer kill streaks, which for me are important to hit because in my opinion anyone can get a cool kill or two here and there, but longer kill streaks are where the consistency shows. In my opinion, why I aim so well with the XE is partly because there is barely no curvature on the sides and the sides are quite flat, so I can pretty much hold my fingers anywhere I like and basically every position and all kinds of different claw styles feel comfortable. It's super easy to adjust mid-game and even during a gunfight, and because there is quite a bit of room still on the sides, I can control how much of my fingers are touching the mousepad. So for example, if I want more friction for those precise flicks, I will have my fingers touch the mousepad more, and then again when I need to do smooth tracking, my fingers are basically not touching the mousepad at all. That also makes it very easy for me to perform vertical motion with the XE. The mouse is also extremely comfortable for my 19 x 10 cm hand size, so even on longer sessions I get no wrist pains or any kind of discomfort. This kind of gives the VAXEE XE some Superlight vibes, but with the Superlight my grips are much more restricted than with the XE. The clear disadvantage that the XE has over the Superlight is of course that the XE still has a cable and it's far less optimal for fingertip grip. But even though I seem to perform so well with the XE, I'm still not quite sure if I actually end up using it, as the shape just does not feel as good as some other options on the market for me. I can clearly perform my best with it though, and maybe using a large mouse is actually the play. That's pretty much it for this one. Check out any of my other mouse related content around the screen, and if you enjoyed the video, hit the like button. If you enjoy my content, hit that subscribe button, and see you in the next one.